the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And then the second two lines of this prayer are expressing this marvelous aspiration, this kind of, the Lamas would say, our what's the motivation? And we'd say maybe what's our goal, what's our purpose, why are we together here? It's to listen to the teachings. Why? So we can take some tools from it to help us develop our own amazing potential, so, for our sake, but so we can be of benefit to others, all the way to leading others to their liberation from suffering and their accomplishment of happiness. That's the long-term goal, like the goal, thinking that's the purpose, that's the motivation for why we're here together today. Sangye charang soke chognam la jang chu baru dagni kyab suchi dagi chonyen gipe sonanki drola penchi sangye dropa sho sangye charang soke chognam la jang chu baru dagni kyab suchi dagi chonyen gipe sonanki drola penchi sangye dropa sho Sangye charang soke chognam la Janchu baru dagni kyab suchi Dagi chonyen gipe sonam ki Drola penchir sangye dropa sho. Okay, so what we're going to do is, for those who want to do for the first time or those who want to renew the ceremony of taking refuge, of sort of formalizing your commitment to being a Buddhist, you know, it's quite short itself. And then after that, we'll be giving the 5 laypersons vows for those who want to do that. But before this, we're going to be discussing all this, giving a background to it all, the teachings, so people have a firm basis for why they would like to do that. And then the second thing we're going to do is do the ceremony of giving the Bodhisattva vows for those who want to do it. One doesn't have to do that, but you can certainly listen to take the teachings about the Bodhisattva vows. And then we'll do the ceremony, which is actually taken word for word from a teaching that is the Bodhisattva vows that His Holiness gave as a unique thing, not as part of an empowerment, at a teaching years ago. And we're going to be using that as our basis. And then we're going to, the last 90 minutes, we're going to, for those who want to be involved, you can do it just as a blessing or involved, actually take the empowerment, is do the first stages of the so-called, this empowerment His Holiness Dalai Lama we're going to be doing tomorrow into a particular practice of Avalokiteshavara, Chenrezig, the Buddha of compassion. The actual empowerment is tomorrow, and it's from a couple of years ago. His Holiness has given permission for people to do it online, on Zoom, or directly, or even as like now, as a recording. He gave it a couple of years ago in Dharamsala. The actual empowerment into that practice. But today, well, it would have been the day before then when he gave it, is what they call doing the preliminaries. And that's including the various teachings and thinking different things and doing different things, including taking the Bodhisattva vows. Again, that would just be very short within that. So it just seemed to be auspicious to do the ceremony of the Bodhisattva vows beforehand as something longer, which is what you would do if you did it uniquely. When it's given as part of an tantric empowerment, it's just you recite a verse 3 times. But here it's nice to do it in a longer way, and I'll be doing that. And then we'll take them again with His Holiness and do the preliminaries. And then tomorrow we will take the empowerment for His Holiness. So that's what we're doing. That's why we're here. I kind of evolved into this, you know, because it seems to me His Holiness has given us this opportunity. It's extraordinary. I mean, I find many people don't like the idea of teachings online and Zoom, and it's not as pleasing and so on and so forth. It's true. But I have found the last 2 years, it's been a liberation. It's been absolutely extraordinary. First of all, one reason is because it's given so many people around the world who aren't anywhere near a Dharma center an opportunity to hear the teachings, you know. So I've been in Santa Fe for 2 years at the center there to Nobi Ling. And we developed a really intense program of several things every single day, guided meditations in the morning, guided meditations every evening, classes throughout the day, using many different FPMT teachers, like 20, 30 FPMT teachers around the world, you know, including Martin, for example. So it's been an incredible opportunity to share the resources that these individual centers would only usually have for themselves. But because of Zoom now, it's open to everybody. And I think it's been fantastic, frankly. I think it's been really a special opportunity. And I find it very powerful. I mean, recorded, yeah. I'm finding it very helpful. Like seeing you people here, you know, seeing you all, I find it very personal. And I find, for example, in Nobi Ling, in Santa Fe, we had a thing called Be Your Own Therapist, just 1 hour, a couple of times a week. And it's just usually introductory things, you know, and having people, normally I'm looking at the screen. So here I'm looking at people as well here, but I'm looking at you as well. But normally you know, people on the screen, I find that people are being intensely personal because they're sitting, some of you are sitting in your lounge, you're sitting on your own in your lounge, and I'm here on the screen. People are feeling it very personal. And often in some of these classes, I mean, Lou would know, he's been coming to them, Alona has been coming to them, you know, people, it's really quite intense. It's quite powerful. I find it amazing. And so what's happened with the Lamas, many of the Lamas now are giving empowerments, which is something online. I mean, you would never do that normally. And this whole, I think, has been sort of leading the way in this. So I know one time we did this as a small group of us did this same empowerment with His Holiness online on Zoom, and really people felt, and I think you're going to feel that. You really feel, if you really are feeling focused, you really feel which is you're present, you know. So the only thing is, I'm looking at all this light we're having. So when we see His Holiness, maybe we've got to close off the lights, then you can see him much more clearly on the screen. It's much better, isn't it? We'll see what happens then. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So what we're presenting all the Buddha's teachings is in three different levels of teachings. You know, what different levels of teachings. One way is expressed in terms of the three levels of the sets of vows. So because we're going to be talking about vows a lot here and taking them, it's really important to understand what a vow is. And I think we have a lot of really a lot of superstitious understanding, misconceptions about what a vow is. Because we associate it with religion, and then we think of religion as just swallowing something whole and believing it and doing what you're told, otherwise you get punished. I mean, we are that infantile, but that's how we think of it sometimes. We think of a vow as something that kind of squashes you down, or I'm not allowed to do that. But actually, if you analyze it, anything we learn in life, I always think of driving a car. You learn to drive a car if you had to write down the list of all the things you vow not to do. You don't call it that, but you absolutely vow never to turn the wheel left if you're going to turn right. You vow never to put the foot on the accelerator at the same time as the brake. You never, I mean, there's thousands of things you'd learn. In other words, saying all the things you do have to do, and that often in Buddhism is called a commitment. You promise to do things, and there are certain things you vow not to do. That's exactly how you learn everything. You want, and what's the purpose? To become a really good driver. You wouldn't say, oh, don't you tell me what to do. I can do what I like. I can turn the wheel left if I'm going to go right if I want to. Well, you could try, but the car will explode and you kill people. So it's really, we have this really, I think, with the spiritual approach, kind of infantile view, you know, because we're so used to hearing it as a belief system. And therefore, it's something we've been told to do. We get very fundamentalist about it. And it can indeed, people can be fundamentalist. We can easily become that way. It's a tendency in us. Don't do this, you'll get into trouble. But when we understand the Buddhist approach, you know, there is no creator. Therefore, there is no punisher, there is no rewarder. It doesn't hear this. If you hear Tibetan, the way Tibetans teach is very fundamentalist in a sense, you know, very 10th century. It sounds very fundamentalist, but Buddha is not a creator. There's a fundamental thing in Buddhism. When you learn to rely on Buddha, you're relying on not as your creator, which is the only view we have with religion. We tend to think that with like the major religions, they are the creative religions by definition. The Buddha is not a creator. He would extensively argue, he diverged in his own direction away from these genius Indian scholars and saints and yogis who do posit this concept of a God, you know, even though they posit karma and reincarnation. There's this concept very much of this ultimate energy called God, you know, from which we join or from which we come, you know. No view like that in Buddhism. There's no concept like that. And philosophically, Buddha argues with that. It's not viable. It can't be like that. It's a mistake. It's a misconception. I mean, the Buddha has no argument with the concept of a superior being. It's used in Buddhism. Arya being, superior being. You become one of those yourself as you progress in your spiritual practice. So the Buddha, I mean, even you, I know I gave a talk at the Melbourne Catholic University years ago. And I didn't know what I was going to talk about. I had a 20-minute slot in this conference, right? I think because one of the girls I went to school with, I went to Sacré-Cœur in Glen Iris, right, on Burke Road. I went there. And there's one of the girls, old girls, we'd call ourselves the old girls. Now I think we're called alumni or something. We used to call me old girls. You know, you're an old girl. So one of the old girls, she's Catholic. They're still Catholics, and they I've got my glasses. Thanks. Anyway, she invited me to give a talk. But I remember I didn't know what to talk about until I got there that morning. And I looked up the dictionary for the definition of God. And it said 3 essential qualities: infinite wisdom, it's a tissue there, infinite compassion, and infinite power. I thought, well, that's it. Oh, there we go. That's interesting. I thought, well, that's the definition of Buddha. But the big difference is the Buddha would say every one of us has the potential to have infinite wisdom, infinite compassion, infinite power, and to pervade the universe and benefit sentient beings, but not the job of a creator, because we don't need creating. So I mean, my talk was the similarities with the definition of God and Buddha. I don't know if the Catholics liked it, but that was my talk. The similarity between the definition of God and Buddha, and there are many. I mean, I always say like this, but I think it's really true. If you look over the centuries, humans, how marvelous that humans are looking into the meaning of life. If you ask Australian Aboriginals what they think of the world, I mean, look at the view they have got over the centuries. They don't understand it. It's so complex. Everywhere you go, humans have been looking into the meaning of life. So these days we're scientific thinkers, but there's always been humans looking into the meaning of life. How incredible. How can we ever be so rude as to insult any one of them? You know, you might have to agree with them. And it seems to me many humans over the centuries have come to many similar findings, you know, and you can see so much similarity from the experiential findings of the Christians and the Muslims and the Buddhists, for example. But of course, there are differences. This is the thing. You have to know them, you know. So this idea of infinite power, infinite compassion, infinite wisdom, that's Buddha. And the Buddhist view is everyone can become that. And you don't need just one. And they don't need to have the job of being creator, because we all create ourselves. But as His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, karma is like self-creation. And it's a great way of putting it, you know. And that's where, I mean, I think I find it interesting, and I say this a lot, that if you think of the materialist, the philosophical materialist view of the world, which posits that mummy and daddy make us, or the Christian and Muslim view, which says God made us, at least there's one thing they share: somebody else made you. And that's one of the things that is just not viable in Buddhism. We make ourselves, you know. So this is part of what we have to really kind of comprehend. If we like Buddhism and want to take refuge in the Buddha, meaning rely upon the Buddha and his teachings, if we decide we want to be a Buddhist, quote unquote, this is a fundamental point to get clear. No concept of creator. I know in India, in Mumbai, a couple of years ago, these days, lots and lots of Indians love the Buddhist teachings. They all love Lord Buddha anyway, because like sort of he's Shiva's son or somebody. I don't know enough about the Indian teachings. Are you Hindu? Where you come from? Sikh. Oh, okay, you're Sikh view. I don't know the Sikh view much. But you cropped out of the Hindus, didn't you? You came out of the Hindus. What's the difference between the Hindus view and the Sikh views?
One creator, and there's lots of gods.
But you have karma as well, the Sikhs? So who is Guru Nanak? He's your main boss. He's like your boss.
He started Sikh.
He's the Sikh. He's the main boss Sikh. I see. That's interesting. It must be similar to teachings. I mean, it came out of Hinduism, didn't it?
It was around the same time, and both Islam and Hinduism tried to claim that Nanak was part of it. Different.
Okay. So this is the thing. It's so fascinating how humans over the centuries, you know, we've come up with different views. And even in the Buddhists, there's so many variations of Buddhism. There's so many variations of Christianity. I bet there are many branches of the Sikhs, right? Or not? You only stayed one.
Yeah, it was meant to be one.
There you go. That's happened. The humans, they start to argue, and I'm right, no, but you're right. And what can we do, you know? It's very fascinating, humans, I tell you. And that's why, anyway, it seems to be so many views in the world, and I think it's incredible. I mean, we should be so respectful to humans, whether it's the most fundamental kind of teaching about the Baptist view in the South of America, to the Australian Aboriginals, or Sikh, to somebody else. But it seems to me, you know, not everybody wants a view. I mean, I got one of my sisters, is totally moral, ethical, kind, amazing person. She has not the slightest interest in thinking about these things. She's not narrow-minded. She just doesn't want to think about it. Just needs shit. I don't need to think about that. I don't care where I go, where I come, where I came from, where I go. It's not interested. But she's moral, she's ethical, she's kind, she helps people. I mean, actually, as Holiness said, that's, you know, the secular ethics is the real point. If you're a good, kind person, that's the bottom line, really. As to what your philosophy is, where you come from, where you go. But I know for myself, as a Catholic, we're all brought up the same way, me and my sisters. I always wanted a view. I was always looking for a way to see the world. As soon as I went to Mass, I fell in love with God and Our Lady and the saints. And I announced when I was about 2, I suppose, I was going to be a priest. And I think I must have been so young because I couldn't comprehend intellectually why I couldn't, because I wasn't a boy, right? And they said, you had to be a nun, you know. I thought, well, okay. But I thought about this stuff all the time. When I was naughty, I was the naughtiest kid in the family, but this is always inside me. So we're kind of driven by certain things, isn't it? Always wanting a view. I wanted a view, you know. So when I was about 31, I stumbled across these Tibetans, and here I am, you know, taking this view as my working hypothesis. That's how I like to say it. I mean, there is the word belief. It's a really good word, but so we can really misuse it, to swallow teachings whole and think we're not supposed to. And this is a crucial point in the Buddhist view. This is a crucial point. Remember one time in New Zealand, again, I always quote this, but it's a crucial point. This man in Nelson, New Zealand, at our center there, and he happened to be a scientist. And he said, who revealed the teachings to the Buddha? This is a really major question and a totally valid question if you have the view of a creator, because necessarily the teachings come from on high. And necessarily you cannot prove God to be true, because that means you become God, and you can't say that. That's inappropriate. So he said, who revealed the teaching to the Buddha? And I think he laughed, and the people laughed and quite shocked when I said, well, would you ask Einstein who revealed the teachings about relativity to him? Of course not. And this is the point that's quite shocking in a way, certainly to religious people who have a view of a creator, but it's just a scientific view. Einstein is a person who used his intelligence, who observed the world, and crucially, the natural laws. And that view of natural law has come directly, especially in the Christian world, the Western world that tracks itself back to, the Christians. There was God's law and there's natural law. And natural law only really came about with Mr. beginning to dare to question, isn't it? The Christian teachings and the dogmas of God's laws. Everything was only God's law. And then these scientists started, these clever people started coming, and Mr. Einstein, no, not Mr. Einstein, who was it back then? Galileo, started questioning the findings, and he was practically burned at the stake. You dare to question God's law. So then what's happened is, isn't it, the law, the world, now we've got religion over there, which is not very kind of respected, and then we have solid, real, practical, intelligent science here. So it's become completely split, But the attitude in Buddhism, which always surprises scientists, when they investigate, they discover it's true. That Buddha, basically, as the Dalai Lama said, if you decide you're going to follow Buddha, you're going to decide you're going to follow Buddha's methodology, then by necessarily what you're doing when you follow it, just like with Einstein, you're going to listen to the teachings, you're going to then go home and do your homework, and you're going to prove it to yourself. So if you want to prove to yourself finally that E equals MC squared, Einstein is not telling you to merely believe him. He's saying, go home and you start. So where would you start with 1 + 1 is 2? You prove that first. Then you go to prove the next one. Then you do more complicated. Then you do your algebra. Then you do your physics. And each step of the way, you're hearing the teachings and you're internalizing it, making it your knowledge. That's how you are a Buddhist. And if you, as Dalai Lama says, if you follow the Buddhist teachings and internalize them step by step by step, ticking the boxes as you go, and you get to a point where you actually, from your own direct experience, can prove that he's actually wrong, you must reject him. That's the attitude. I mean, but in a way, we're intellectually lazy. We'd kind of rather believe something. It's easier, And that's one of the things I think in the West, modern world, we confuse liking Buddhism with knowing Buddhism. Liking is fine, but this won't get you far. You can like music or you can like mathematics, but if you don't know it, you're in trouble. And that's why it sounds shocking to say, of course, Einstein necessarily did not have, was not revelation. The teachings about, relativity did not come from on high. They're not mystical. They're not in the sky, separate, that you then swallow and believe. I'm not even criticizing that view. If you have devotion in a creator and you do what the creator says because God's the boss, you live a very nice life. No complaint. But it's not the Buddhist approach. So this is a crucial thing. So I know one time in India, in Mumbai, I was about to say, in Mumbai, all the Indians, all these Hindus, mostly Hindus, love Buddha's teachings now. They really enjoy, and they all wanted to take refuge. And then I discussed it, and I said, well, that means if you're taking refuge, and this is the point I'm getting to here gradually, but that means you're committing to one. You've got 10 boyfriends, and now you've got to commit to one boyfriend. Not because you don't like the other boyfriends, because you've got to commit to one because you go deep into that one. Then they start to worry. And in the end, not one of them took refuge because they all love whoever they love. Shiva, God, whoever. I said, you can like Buddha. You can put him on your altar. You can include him with Shiva and whoever you want, or Guru Nanak, whoever you like. But in the end, choosing one way is very practical because you've got to start practicing. And I think even, for example, if you hear about yoga, there's 40 million teachings of yoga, 40 million teachers, and you can love yoga and know all about the different systems. When you start to practice yoga, you've got to choose one teacher because they'll say, put your right toe to the left. this 1 inch. And the other teacher will say, no, put it to the left 2 inches. You can't do both. So you choose one, and then as you progress, then you can bring in the other systems and you can incorporate all of them. So it's really reasonable, actually. So when you decide to become a Buddhist, it's because you've decided, you've checked on the Buddha. The first thing, you check on the Buddha. So when you become a Buddhist, you're taking refuge, as they say, relying upon Buddha, his teachings, and then the community of practitioners, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. That means you choose that that's the one you want to commit to. That's the one you want to, in other words, he's your guy. Buddha's my guy, you know. I like Jesus. I like Lenin. You know, I like Mickey Mouse. Someone says, you have Mickey Mouse on your altar. I don't care. So it's a sense that you've checked up on it. It makes sense to you as where you're at, and you decide that's your path, that's your style, that's the approach you want to take. You know, and you need to be certain about that. No one can tell you to do it. We need to be certain about that. So the first thing, so when I said, so with Einstein, I said, who revealed the teachings to Einstein? And this is a major thing to really get clear in your head. It's a really crucial point. We never say, I believe in mathematics. We never say, I believe in botany. We don't say that. We know you have to know mathematics. You have to know botany. And you can then say you really believe in math because you proved it. So belief is having confidence in it, you know, confide, confidence with trust. It's based on your own experience and intelligence. So in the beginning, you can't have confidence based on experience because you don't have any. That's why you have to check up. Do your due diligence. Be really clear. What exactly does it mean, Buddha? You look into who Buddha was historically. You check his teachings. You see what he says. He says many things similar to the Sikhs, many things similar to the Christians, many to the Muslims, many things similar to the Hindus. There's no doubt about that. There's many common experiences in all philosophies, including materialism. The Buddha's got his own style, you know, his own approach. But the crucial one for those of us who've come from creator religions is there's no concept of creator. So when these Indian guys, all these people in these teachings got that point, they realized, you know, they stick to your own religion, it's fine. Stick to your own approach, have your concept of God. You can like Buddha, you can utilize Buddha's teachings, but you wouldn't say you take refuge in the Buddha. So this taking refuge is a very Buddhist phrase, but it means that's the path I want to follow. That makes sense to me. Commit. So commitment is just when you put your money where your mouth is, really. So, okay, what is this refuge then? There's Buddha. So first, I was going to say 3 sets. One way of presenting the Buddhist teachings is in terms of their 3 sets of vows, which relate very much to the 3 levels of the presentation of the path to Buddhahood. So you've got, you know, another analogy I like to use repeatedly. One way of presenting all the teachings in terms of the 2 wings of the bird. A bird needs 2 wings, wisdom and compassion. So if you're in Thailand or Burma, you're going to listen to the Theravadan Buddhist teachings. And that's the wisdom wing. That's it. It's shared by the same as if you're practicing a Buddhist, a Tibetan Buddhist, or a Japanese Buddhist. The teachings shared by all those different practitioners. The first stages of the practice. And all those teachings are to help you. You're the main beneficiary. You are the beneficiary of those practices. And you, at that level, you would take what they call the Patimoksha vows. The vows of individual liberation. So they're the vows that enable you at this first stage of the practice to harness the energy of your body, your speech, and your mind. And then eventually on the basis of those vows and living in that way, this wisdom wing, or if you look at the packaging of the teachings in the Tibetan packaging, the Gelugpa packaging, the Lam Rim, that's the first 2 scopes of practices. The very first level is, Buddha suggests that we control our body and speech. And the vows here are all about that. So vows in Buddhism are all about body and speech, all about behavior. They're not about the mind. They're ways of, as Alex Berzin in these course notes that you've probably received PDFs of, commentaries by Alex Berzin, an American scholar. And he said of vows is something that helps you shape your behavior. Look at all the things when to drive a car, all those instructions, don't do this and don't do that and do this, that shapes your behavior to become a good car driver. It's very reasonable. So here, what's the kind of person we're trying to become here is at least minimum, a moral, ethical, non-harming person, bare minimum that. So the beneficiary of the first level of vows, pratimoksha, is you are the beneficiary. The vows are Buddha exhorting us, for example, the 5 vows we're going to give here for those who are your lay people, the same as the monks and nuns vows, it's the same level. He's exhorting us to not kill, steal, lie, jump on the wrong partner, or take intoxicants. They're all behaviors. And who's the beneficiary of those? Well, you are the direct beneficiary. Hear it that way. Not killing means don't kill another person. So clearly they're beneficiary, but the energy behind it, the goal behind it is to protect you from harming yourself. So that gets us. This is this first level of teachings. The fundamental one to understand is the law of karma. These Pratimoksha vows, this very first level of practice, the teaching shared by all those stages, all the different Buddhist teachings around the world, these first stages of practice. Buddha exhorts us to not harm others. Why? It's because that's because they will harm you. So this gets us also to the natural law and God's law, the difference, massive, especially in where we've come from a religious view, massive difference. For the Buddha, there is only God's law. There is only Buddha's law. There's only natural law. There are not ordinary little Buddha's rules. When Buddha started teaching, then he sort of started developing vows in relation to how people live together as in a household, you know, like 3 people live together, and you're going to have notes up. You wash the dishes and don't forget to clean the toilet and that kind of thing. We say that to each other. That's like there are those types of things, behaviors, but the fundamental things about the universe, the way the world is, they're the natural laws. And for Buddha, there's only natural law. There's no equivalent of God's law. Not like that. It's a huge point. So, for example, you know, when I was a Catholic, Jesus said, I should not, I mean, his 10 little instructions. Buddha's got 10 instructions too, in the very beginning, before you take vows. So Jesus would say, don't kill. Well, so would Buddha. Jesus says, don't lie. So does Buddha. Jesus says, don't jump on the wrong partner. So does Buddha. So you got to ask each one, though, because that's the radical difference. You ask Jesus, but why? Why not? And he will tell you, it's because God said. This is a major, major point. I always quote this repeatedly, but this is totally relevant at this level of teachings, you know. That when I asked a Catholic priest friend of mine, what is it that defines something as being a wrong action, a sin? He said, by definition, a sin is doing what God said not to do. Now, if we think about it in this guilty way we act in our lives, we think of negative actions like that. It's what mummy said not to do, and it's what daddy said not to do, and it's what the police say not to do, and what the government says not to do. We end up trying to then try to do things not to get caught. If we don't get caught, we think, oh, I got away with it. That's very schizophrenic for the Buddha. There's no concept like that in Buddhism. Not these major laws, not these fundamentals about the nature of the universe. So you ask Buddha, why do you suggest not to kill Buddha? And he will fit these 2 things. He defines a negative action as one in the most harmful one, as one that harms another. That's clear. Killing harms another. So clear. But why, at this first stage of practice, he exhorts us not to do it, is not based on compassion yet. He says it's because, guess what, and this is the law of karma, which we have to talk about a bit. It's hugely important in Buddhism. It's the basis of Buddhism. It's the fundamental teaching in Buddhism. Without karma, the whole of Buddhism would collapse into a heap of nonsense. As a worldview, it has no basis. So what Buddha's saying is, every millisecond of what any sentient being thinks or does or says, just necessarily, and where's this information come from? His own observation, like Einstein. He's observed this with his own mind. And anybody who's practiced this since and has proven it to be true has also seen it with their own mind. The radical difference, of course, is that the Buddhist approach to what the mind is, which is coming from these incredible Indians before the Buddha, is the mind's got subtler levels of cognition, which we can access when we do these meditation techniques, you know. But necessarily, for the Buddha, he's found, through his own direct experience, that everything we think and do and say necessarily, as they would put it, leaves seeds in the mind, which bring future fruits, which are called our experiences. So it's in that sense we create ourselves. We are the main player in who we become. And this is quite a shocking concept, because we are convinced either it's a creator, or it's your mother, or the father, or the Catholic Church, or the mean people who harmed you, whatever. We look to the outside as the main force. But the Buddha's view is the main source of who I become, the main cause of my happiness, the main cause of my suffering is my past actions. It's not punishment and it's not reward. And we understand it. If you're good at piano, you're not surprised that you created the pianist. You don't say, oh, I'm a good pianist because of Mr. Bach. You thank Mr. Bach for his music. You thank Mr. Steinway for his piano. But you know you're the boss. You created the musician. We don't say it that way, but when we do understand it that way, that's what we're talking here. When it comes to goodness and badness and morality and all the rest, we create our own happiness and we create our own suffering from life. And of course, the radical point for the Buddha is our consciousness didn't begin in this life. It comes from before. So this teaching is based on the fundamental point in Buddhism that our consciousness is not physical. Buddha does not posit a separate piece called a soul. Not like that. Consciousness. It is not the handiwork of mummy and daddy. It is not the function of the brain. It works intimately connected to the brain. There's no question. It's not itself the brain. And it is not the handiwork of a creator. This is clear in Buddhism. And this is the massive difference. It's a major difference. If you have faith in the creator, please go for it. But Buddha would not suit you. Many parts of Buddhism would suit you, but not this view. We don't need creating, Buddha says. He says it's a misconception. It's not being rude. It's his observation. So we need to be clear about that. And even if you're not sure, haven't studied it that deeply, but that's a fundamental point. And many people in our culture, certainly we being Christian, we had comfortable. I heard it first. I was very comfortable with that view. It wasn't a problem for me, even though I was totally in love with God. But even as a kid, I remember I loved God and loved all the saints and everything, but I never thought of God as my creator. So I think I must have been a Buddhist anyway. But I sort of liked God instead, you know. Then I called him Buddha later on. Or Buddha, whatever. So the very first level of practice then, which is expressed in these vows, which is expressed in the very first level of Buddha's his teachings, his advice to us, don't kill. Why not, Buddha? Because guess what? It is an action that harms another. But the point is, because it's driven by your own anger or your own attachment, your own neuroses, it'll leave powerful negative imprints in your mind, Robina, that will ripen in 4 different ways in the future. So this is the fundamentals about karma. One way our karma ripens, and the main one, is a type of rebirth. A type of rebirth. So as far as Buddha is concerned, it's a strong, intentional action of non-killing, the karmic seed of which was triggered at the time of our past death, that then programmed us to go to our present mother's human womb. So we created the course to get a human mother and a human body. That's the first way the karma ripens. Secondly, karma ripens as a tendency to do something, good or bad, in your mind. So you're born with a mind and a body, and in your mind, you've got a bunch of tendencies. To be good at football, to be good at killing, to be good at love, to be good at kindness, to be good at math. They're your habits, you brought them with you. Third way karma ripens is as an experience, mostly at the hands of others, how we're seen and treated by others. And the fourth way our karma ripens is in terms of the physical world or the environment itself, the way it impacts upon us. And the more we understand even just these 4 points, it gives us real insight into who we are and why things happen to us, good and bad. So this is the first basis, the basis for the first instructions, advice that Buddha would give us. Don't kill. Why? Because it's going to harm you in the future, Robina. And this is something I think we miss very much, certainly in the modern world. So us so-called Western people who grew up with Christianity and so on. We still hear it as punishment and reward. We can't help it. It's very naive. It's not like that at all. There's no punisher. There's no rewarder. My mother used to say, my Catholic mother used to say, virtue has its own rewards. That's what Buddha's telling us. So having a sense of this brings a real sense of accountability, that I create myself. Do I want future suffering? No, thank you. Then Buddha says, well, honey child, don't create it. Very simple, very clear, very uncomplicated. Don't create it, which means don't harm others. You don't want a tendency to lie and kill and steal. That you certainly know that. You do not want to be lied to, killed, or stolen from. You don't want, the environment to be ugly and horrible, and you certainly don't want a lower realm rebirth, if you like to think of that one. So we know we don't want that. So here we are taking Buddha's teachings as our hypothesis. This is the basis of our practice of morality and ethics and goodness. But the energy behind it is that it's like protecting yourself. It's self-respect. It's like compassion for yourself. Not just trying to be a good girl and you'll get rewarded. Not like that. If you're a Christian, fine. God will reward you. That's not the issue here. Buddha's job is not to reward or punish. There's no concept like that in Buddhism. So it's this point that's a kind of a crucial starting point, I'd say, for someone who likes the Buddha's teachings, who wants to rely upon the Buddha's teachings. The very first level, which is rooted in these vows, is the concept of karma. Abide by the laws of karma, which means learn to be a nice person, behave nicely, mold your behavior into the behavior of a nice person. And you are the first beneficiary. You have to remember that and be delighted about that. But as Lama Zopa says, of course, the rats and cockroaches will have a party. You leave them in peace. The teachings at this level, the pratimoksha, individual liberation level of teachings, are that the direct beneficiary is you. You should be happy with that. They're methods for you to get happy. It's for you to not suffer. Not just to be a good girl so someone praises you. Not to be a good girl and you won't get punished. That's not the point. And this takes time to internalize. And it brings a sense of accountability and responsibility, and you kind of grow up. We're the boss. We're the boss. We're the boss. So in that sense, Buddha's like not our creator. He's not even our boss. He's an advisor. We get that when it comes to physical health. You go to your doctor and she will warn you very clearly, Robina, you must stop smoking. Why? Not because I say so. She won't say that. Because she says, look at this, the dire results to you if you smoke. So we understand when it comes to the body, and we have a great sense of compassion for ourselves when it comes to what we eat, because we know we don't want future suffering. That's exactly the view of karma. It's self-respect, not being a good girl and a bad girl, which is very childish. This is the fundamental point that behind the idea of who a Buddha is, And one has to think about this to become comfortable with it. If you feel you want to rely upon the Buddha, his path, his approach. This is the starting point. This is the first stages of practice, expressed in these vows, by the laws of karma, because you don't want future suffering. You do want future happiness. You want to know that and want that and be very sincere about that. Not just trying to be a good girl, I said. It's a major shift in the mind. Of course, at this stage, who's clairvoyant? Who can see with certainty that karma is true? We cannot. When you're at grade 1, 1 + 1 is 2, you cannot understand E = mc². So you're taking all this as your working hypothesis. That's what I continually like to say. It's the best way to put it. Not I believe in karma. Oh, I believe in physics. No, you don't say that. You're taking on board this information as your hypothesis, and then you go home and do your homework and you prove it one baby step at a time. It's incremental, it's gradual, it's experiential, it's hands-on. That's the crucial point. So, at this particular one of taking refuge, we're going to rely upon the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. So what do those words mean? Well, they talk about absolute Buddha and relative Buddha, absolute Sangha and relative Sangha, absolute Dharma second, and then 3, absolute relative Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and then relative. So what they mean by that is, it's not complicated. But so absolute Buddha, well, what we could say really is that the word Buddha itself, the Sanskrit word, is actually referring to a fully enlightened mind. So I quote this repeatedly, but I like it a lot. The etymology of this word, Buddha. Bud implies the utter eradication from one's own mind of all neuroses, all ego, all attachment, anger, fears, all the rubbish. The stuff that Buddha has found are the root cause of our suffering. And he has found methods. This is Buddha's unique approach, his unique point. He has found methods to rid the mind utterly of ego grasping, attachment, anger, and all the other neuroses. He's found that they are not at the core of our being. This is something that's quite radical psychologically. You talk to a modern psychologist, that's considered to be like mental illness. We give equal status, don't we, to a normal person in our world, in our psychological models and our neuroscientific models. A normal person has some anger, some compassion, some jealousy, some depression, some intelligence, a mixture of both. The Buddha is way more radical. It's very hard to hear it, actually. Sounds initially quite shocking. He has found, and this is indicated by Buddha, that we can rid the mind utterly. That's what nirvana means. This word referring to the state of mind of the person who's done this job that Buddha says he's done himself, which he lays out the methods to do, of ridding your mind. This is the wisdom wing. You perfect the wisdom wing. You've rid the mind utterly of all the neuroses in the mind, the delusions, and therefore rid yourself of suffering and its causes. This is exactly the Buddha's point. So to even consider this a possibility is quite shocking. Then Da implies the development to perfection of everything else in your mind. The virtues, love, compassion, kindness, generosity, forgiveness, joy, so-called, all these things. They are at the core of our being, Buddha says. They're indestructibly part of who we are. They cannot be removed. Now, these are odd concepts because we don't think this way in psychological models. We don't think this way in neuroscientific models. So Buddhism is very distinctly different. So if you want to take it seriously, you need to study it, you know. There's a different way of seeing. So the word Buddha refers to the absolute Buddha, a person, the mind of a person who's done this job, perfected their goodness and rid the mind of all their rubbish. So that mind, that consciousness is not physical by definition. The key point in Buddhism, he doesn't talk about a soul or a spirit. He doesn't talk like that. Or a self, Atman, as the Hindus would say. It's not some intrinsic part of us that's come from a creator. It's called the soul or the self. Not like there's no, that's where Buddha diverged from those views. There's no view like that. He talks about mind or consciousness, and these words are used synonymously, and they cover everything, from the grossest to the most subtle level. So for the Buddha, mind or consciousness by definition is not physical. So if we want to study neuroscience, go for it, marvelous. I'm not trying to insult neuroscientists when I would say that the Buddhist way of saying it would be that a brain, what goes on in the brain, is a physical indicator of what's going on in the mind at a grosser level. Because they don't, the Buddhist, the neuroscientific model or the psychological models don't posit these subtler levels, which were discovered by these ingenious Indians more than 3,000 years ago. They're the ones who invented this technique called shamatha, for concentration, samadhi. And then Buddha went through this system, went as far as he could go, and then he diverged in his own direction. So the word Buddha is referring a person, a mind that has become perfected. And that mind, this is where it sounds pretty like science fiction. When you're a Buddha, this consciousness of yours being not physical, it's no longer hindered by time or space or matter. How can it be? It can't be confined by space or time or matter. It's not physical. Therefore, it pervades the universe, which is how people talk about God. There is nowhere where Buddha mind does not exist. It can't not be everywhere. Second, it has infinite wisdom that sees things exactly as they are. This is a very specific way Buddha talks. But the delusions in our mind, one, causes suffering, but two, blind us to reality. So the consequence of developing your mind, one is you get more happy, but two, you get clearer and wiser. And literally you expand your consciousness till eventually you've perfected it. So your consciousness pervades the universe when you're a Buddha. Has infinite wisdom that sees the minds of all beings. Has infinite compassion for everyone as if they were you. There's no distinction, there's no dualism, there's no separation any longer. It's as if you are oneness with every mind and every being in the universe. And you have this infinite compassion to only want to help them. The wisdom to do so, and the power, the ability to do so, which includes, in the Buddhist view, the ability to effortlessly manifest your consciousness in countless physical forms throughout countless universes for countless eons to benefit countless sentient beings. That sounds pretty cosmic. The most cosmic science fiction you've ever heard. But that's the Buddhist view. That's the meaning of Buddha. Now, what good is that to peanuts like you and me? I can't access that consciousness. So what, out of kindness, the Buddhas, these sentient beings, these holy beings, manifest in bodies that I can see and hear, that I can relate to. So that's the conventional Buddha. And that would be for us, in this context, would be the Mr. Buddha of 2,500 years ago. This Indian man who, went through the process, taught, and became enlightened, and then taught until he was like 80 or something. So that's a conventional Buddha. You could say like that. Relative, absolute Buddha and relative Buddha. So in terms of checking up, you would then read the teachings, listen to it, read the history to see if there's some reasonableness in the fact that this person, existed, and the teachings over the centuries and all the lineages and all the different countries that have practiced Buddhism. You get some confidence, isn't it? It's up to you to do that. Not just, I like Buddha, not like that. So confidence. Then there's his Dharma, his teachings, basically, his methods that he used to become a Buddha. So that Dharma, the absolute Dharma, is actually the knowledge, the wisdom, the knowledge in that mind of that person. But again, you can't access that. We can't access that knowledge. We need speech. So out of kindness, Buddha has expressed that wisdom in words, conceptual concepts. That's the level we live at, isn't it? That's the relative Dharma. So that's contained in the books. And now these days, CDs and iPads and computers and, all the little devices. That's the relative Dharma. And that's the key one. That's the one you rely upon. You can have Buddha looking at you very nicely for 47 years. But if Buddha doesn't open their mouth and give you the advice, it's very clear. You need the advice. And we live at a conceptual level, which is a gross level, yes. So we need the words at that level. That's the advice we take. That's what we need most. That's what we rely upon most. Take refuge in, rely upon the methodology, the advice that Buddha used to become for himself. So I was thinking of someone like Bach, music. The actual Bach, Bach is his mind, which you can't see. Then the actual music is in his mind. You can't see that. So he puts it down as notations on a piece of paper. So you can play it and become your Bach. So that's clearly what we need most. And they talk about the power of speech. Buddha's main gift to us is his speech. The advice. That I would put into practice for me to become my Buddha. He's showing me how I can become my Buddha. That's the point. And the third is this spiritual community. I mean, we need that. We're human, we're social beings, aren't we? We need people who are doing the same thing to support us. We need to be supported by each other. Spiritual community, Sangha. So the actual absolute, as they call spiritual community, the absolute Sangha are, okay, there's this word again, Arya being. From the Buddhist perspective, you become an Arya being at some point in your spiritual practice when you've accomplished the ultimate wisdom, when you've realized emptiness, when you've cut the root of samsara, you've cut the root of suffering by having a direct experiential, non-conceptual cognition of the ultimate reality of the self. That's how they talk. Okay, we'll go into this. When you've got that, you become an Arya being. So this third group, this third refuge, the Sangha, absolute level, are those very beings, anywhere from a person who's realized emptiness all the way up to Buddha. That's the ultimate, the absolute community. But you can't recognize that. It could be the homeless person down the road. It could be your ugly old next door neighbor you think is a creep. It could be an Arya being, showing you your mind. So the relative Sangha are the monks and nuns, those living in the fullness of the vows of Buddha's extensive teachings known as the Vinaya, all these explanations of ethical behavior and so on and so forth. So there's the relative Sangha, and Buddha would say that it's the presence in any one place of at least 4 fully ordained monks or nuns as the criterion of the existence of the Dharma in that place, as a living thing, not something in a book, experiential. Just roughly speaking, that's Buddha Dhamma Sangha, roughly speaking. So anybody who's going to take refuge for the first time, that's the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, roughly. If you have questions about that so far, you're very welcome to talk. I've no idea how we're going to go on with time. I've got a feeling we're going to go over time today. We're going to have to see what happens. See, already 1 hour's gone. Okay, are there any questions about that for those who want to take refuge for the first time? Yes, Jeremiah.
Hello, so if there's not a creator. Just a moment, Jeremiah. We're going to work out how we're going to do this sound, and I think it might be like this. Let's try that. Can you start speaking?
Yes.
Hello?
Can't hear at all.
Hello?
Talk to me now, Jeremiah. See if we can
Hello?
hear you.
Can you
He's
hear
talking,
me?
but we can't hear. Why can't we get on the computer? At least on the computer here. The volume. Can you talk for me?
Yes.
But it's, okay.
Oh, it's right
So
up.
talk now.
Hello?
There we go. Well done.
Okay.
Talk to me.
Okay, so if there's not a creator, and we are reincarnating ourselves into existence from past seeds that we planted,
Right.
what would be the genesis of karma?
You mean you want a first moment?
The genesis.
You mean-
If there's
The process of
not
it.
a creator, yeah. So what would Buddha say if we're the reincarnation over and over and over
Exactly.
of our past actions?
Exactly. Okay, so this is the point, Jeremiah. The Buddha would say that given that this process is actually one expression of this natural law called cause and effect. So in terms of karma, so for example, if we look at Jeremiah, there's two different ways. One is we're positing here that Jeremiah has a consciousness, which is not physical, and that he's programmed that consciousness with his own past actions and proceeds to program it with his present actions, which will ripen in the future. So right now, Jeremiah is experiencing some of the results of his past actions programmed in this continuity of consciousness. Now, this continuity of consciousness, if we just think of the consciousness itself as a continuity, if you did this analysis, if you're tracking it back millisecond by millisecond, this moment of Jeremiah's consciousness has to come from the previous millisecond and the previous millisecond. And you can track this back, and you go in back, you'd go back in an unbroken chain of mental moments, and you get back to the first second of conception. So then the second before conception, you can track your body back to mummy and daddy. Thank you, mummy and daddy. And that goes back to the monkeys. No problem. But Jeremiah's consciousness can be tracked back to a subtle level of that continuity, and not more than a few weeks before that, it was in a previous body. So then we want to know where that came from, and you do the same thing, and then a previous body, and then a previous body. Now we all want desperately to come to sort of a creation principle, the first moment, the first cause. And Buddha says, by definition, if we posit cause and effect, you can never ever find a first moment. It's a simple process of cause and effect, millisecond by millisecond, in this mental continuum that is necessarily beginningless.
Because it's free of space and time, because there is no time.
Well,
Kind of right. So there is time, but there is, so like where karma plays out in time, but it's
not like
it's
that. No,
beyond time.
not like
No.
that. Not like that. We are talking conventional reality here. So the conventional thing is there is time, and but what even in our Western teachings and the scientific teachings, as His Holiness said one time, the Dalai Lama, we all Big Bang. He says no problem. We're looking for but he says that's not the first Big Bang. So, but what we instinctively want is the first moment. The Christians have extensive teachings with a capital F and a capital C for the first cause. They give extensive teachings on trying to show how there can be a first cause, which is God, and God necessarily is beginningless, but has no cause and has always just been there. The Buddha would say that he's not viable. That everything that exists now, including the physical, you could say you can never find the first moment. Because you keep, if you go back in this analysis of your consciousness 50 million lives ago, if you keep going back, if you get to what you think is the first moment, then you have to say, no, it can't be, because that has to have come from a previous moment. So you will never find a first moment. So the conclusion is your consciousness and all matter and all minds are beginningless, as nutty as it sounds. And the main fault there, Buddha says, is because of this ego grasping, this root delusion, which we're going to talk about. There's a compulsion to find a first cause, a compulsion to say, where did it all begin? Can't be, not possible. That's the Buddha's view. Try to think about that. But
Thank you.
There can be an end to the delusions. There can be an end, because the thing is, like, if you get a chicken, you check it back to an egg. And you get the chicken and track it back to the egg, to the chicken, but you can break that egg anytime you like and get no more chickens. So you can quit. That's the Buddha's point. You can quit delusions because they are adventitious. They're beginningless, but they're not endless. And that's what nirvana means. You've got to analyze these things, Jeremiah. I'm just saying them kind of briefly,
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Good. No, thank you. What else, people? Anything? Question here? Yes.
When do you know which person you say not to help harm others? So at the moment I have a situation, let's just say I had a bad tradesman and did some bad work.
Yeah, that's right.
All right.
Yeah.
So in the first instance, it would be, don't react to the tradesman. He's done me harm, but I'm not going to react to that tradesman in anger or whatever. But also I'm thinking of, I need to give feedback on high pages to warn others of his potential and his mannerisms that he will create, because he will do that behavior again. So where do I
know what we're discussing here, I understand.
Yeah.
So that's a good point. What we're discussing here is the stages of practice.
Right.
So this level of practice we're describing here, there's no discussion about compassion yet. There's no discussion about doing something to benefit others or to warn others. All this first level is about you protecting yourself from doing something negative. This is our main concern at the beginning. Do not lie, do not steal, do not harm, do not kill. It's not implying passivity, because if you get to the next level and you're genuinely coming from compassion, also for him, you'll do something wisely to be of benefit. But that comes after you really control your own body, speech, and mind. So we're discussing mainly the first level, protect yourself. That's it. Do you understand? Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
When the delusions become endless.
Say it again.
When the delusions,
The neurotic parts of us,
yeah,
they're not endless. They can be ended. So they can be ended. That's the whole point.
yeah. So when they become endless,
When they quit, when they stop,
Yeah.
when you stop anger, stop attachment, stop
yeah,
jealousy.
all the
Yes.
neuroses, what happens then to that consciousness?
That consciousness is when you've quit when you've achieved the wisdom wing, which is what I'm saying here, instead of the compassion wing, you've done the wisdom, you've completely rid the mind of all neuroses. You realize you've subdued your body and speech, you've subdued attachment and anger, the branch delusions, you get to the root delusion, this intrinsic sense of mistaken sense of self. You've quit that by realizing it doesn't exist, and then you perfect that and you've achieved your own nirvana. So if you're on the compassion wing as well, you don't need to come back after that. You've done the job. You can go into bliss. You're fine. You don't need to come back into this world because you've stopped the causes. But if you're on the bodhisattva path, you will want to come back to then can perfect the compassion wing and achieve Buddhahood, so you can continue to benefit others. But from your side, you've done the job. You're finished.
And it's finished, like ended.
Finished rebirth.
Yeah, after
Your consciousness will continue. Stay in a state of bliss. There are different discussions in the Buddhist teachings about this. But the teachings here that we're describing, you'd go into this subtle state of bliss, which is the fruit of, because the delusions are gone. Very subtle state, wouldn't take rebirth. But eventually, so they say that the Buddha will come along one lifetime though and say, tap you on the shoulder, say, okay, honey, enough of this bliss. Come back into the human birth, become a Buddha now so you can help others.
So this is the Buddha does this. So this is like the advisor comes.
If you like, it's the way they talk.
Yeah.
You with me? Clear, Pam? Okay. Different teachings. I mean, the Theravada teachings say when you've achieved your nirvana, you're gone. You've disappeared, nothing left. There's different discussions among the Buddhists about this. Do you understand? Yeah? Okay, good job. Who else?
There's a question from Sonia.
Yes, Sonia, good.
Sonia says, the neurotic parts of us, were they always present?
Present me, they're in the mind. The tendencies might be there. At some lifetimes, when we've had a lot of, we've had all kinds of rebirths, Buddha says, we've been all the best and all the worst. And as long as we're in samsara, this definition of being in samsara means you've still got delusions. So some lifetimes, they'd be very quiet. You'd be enormously virtuous and amazing, special person. But other times you might be born in the lower realms and having intense suffering. So they're always there. The tendencies are always there until you realize emptiness, until you've got rid of ego. Okay, Sonia, is that clear? Where's Sonia? Thank you. Okay. Who else, people? What else? Who else? Nothing.
Diana?
Yes. Yes. What's your name?
Just you.
Who?
Just
Just you.
you.
Just spell it. Sounds like a
Jasjit.
oh, just you. Okay, I hear it. Good. Go, just you. Talk to me.
So on this path, there's levels of becoming superior.
Yes.
Is it possible to come down a level?
Okay, at a certain point, once you become a superior being and you've realized emptiness, once you've cut the root of the primordial misconception of an intrinsic just eat, we're going to go into this. Once you cut that, you can't fall back, but you can until then. I mean, the Buddha would say we've had samadhi in countless lifetimes. We've been incredibly high beings in countless lifetimes. Can you even lose bodhicitta? But until you've cut the root of all the nonsense, which is the achievement of the wisdom wing, until you've cut that, which they call realizing emptiness. We're going to go into this. Cut the misconception of an intrinsic self. Once you've done that, you can't fall back. Okay? That's exactly right. Yeah, exactly. Just it. Thank you. What else?
Diana has a question.
Hello, Diana. Where are you, darling? Who are you?
Oh, wonderful to see you. Thank you so much, Venerable Robina. It's wonderful. Thank you. And I'm sorry I couldn't be here earlier. Degenerate times. The Buddhist teachings talk about the degenerate times, and it's only since COVID and since the climate emergency that I thought, well, are we in the degenerate times, Robina?
I think the criterion of being degenerate, I think it makes sense. Degenerate times means there's lots of good things available very easily. So I want to use even this discussion here about the fact that we can now get all these teachings on Zoom. In Tibet, even 100 years ago, if you wanted to meet the Dalai Lama, you'd have to walk for months from one side of the country to the other, or you might climb on a riak, you know. The only way to get teachings from the Dalai Lama, you have to make enormous effort. Now you just press a button and you hear him teaching and even giving an empowerment. So in a way that's good, there's good things available in degenerate time. But the tragedy of that is we take it for granted and abuse it and misuse it. Oh, I don't think the Dalai Lama, I don't want to do that. It's boring. I might take an empowerment, then I'll go drop it in the toilet, you know. So the degenerate, a sign of it is we take it all for granted and get kind of greedy. But I think it's, I mean, there's no question they'd say it's degenerate times now, where there's so much good, there's so much available. It's incredible what's available in every way. So it's degenerate times. So we must treasure it and not waste it. And then that's the perfect thing, you know, that's the best thing. Do you understand?
Just a quick, I have someone that's, you know, very intelligent, but always talking about war and that the war is inevitable. And well, you know, everyone has their own opinion, but how to ameliorate, I mean, because I think anything's possible. Just your thoughts on
if we analyze attachment and aversion, the two main delusions effectively in daily life, and we could spend the next 6 weeks talking about this and we won't have the time. These are our main problem. And so when attachment is never getting what it wants, which is very constant, then aversion arises. And so one of the ways we misuse our critical capacity is to always find fault. So it's really this aversion of anger, and then being paranoid and seeing the worst in everything and always imagining the worst, forever criticizing politicians, forever criticizing the world, always fighting, always criticism, misusing our critical facility as anger. It's basically finding fault, it's anger, and we go crazy.
And how do I have someone that lives close to me that's in that kind of mindset.
Honey,
Don't argue with them. Yeah.
Love them. Don't buy into their anger. Just love them. Don't criticize them. Don't find fault in them. Don't try to give them advice. Just love them. And if it gets too much, just leave. Do you understand?
Bless you.
Okay.
Bless you, Robina. Bless you.
So what else, people? Okay. May I know who wanted to take refuge for the first time in the room? Okay, I see. Good, thank you. And who? A few people on the screen that want to take refuge for the first time? Okay, good. Okay, good.
So encouraged to keep taking refuge.
Okay, you know, some people say you don't need to, but I just think it makes sense. It makes sense to remind yourself, to sit there humbly listening to the teachings, thinking about reminding yourself of what you committed to, reminding yourself of your vows. Of course, it's marvelous. I think it's marvelous. It's a fantastic thing to do. Really good. Absolutely. So I'm not sure whether we should do that now or go to the Bodhisattva vows first. I'm not sure. I think we should do this one now. Then people who don't want the rest can go. You go in stages, okay? You can leave. Bye, I'm out of here. Refuge done. If you want to stay longer, you're very welcome. So why don't we do that now we're now going to talk about the vows. I haven't begun to talk about that yet. So let's talk about the vows now. So the key one for me is this point about recognizing Buddha's not a creator. It's not punishment. It's not reward. That we're the boss. And this is the basis of your starting point of teachings. There's a real confidence in that approach, you know, a real confidence in that approach. Very important. So, okay, there's the other point, the next piece. You can take refuge on its own. You don't even need to go to the next piece, which is taking the vows. You can take the vows, but if you do, you take refuge first. But you can't take the vows because these are Buddha's vows without first you taking refuge. So let's look at the vows now, what they mean. So the vows, Buddha waxes lyrical about vows. There's something incredibly powerful about vows. Psychologically, I find that very encouraging. I think it's logical. Let's look into it. So first of all, the vows, like I said, what they are, there's 5 layperson's vows, either prati moksha, individual liberation for the layperson. Monks and nuns have a lot more, but it's the same level. It's this first level of practice, which is mainly you are the beneficiary, protecting you from misusing your body and speech, driven by delusions, which cause you to harm others, therefore protecting you from future suffering. That's the logic of vows, not just be a good girl or bad girl. Like I said, you've got to get that point. So, okay, one is to not kill. So first of all, you break it in a major way if you kill a human being. So to break a vow is quite powerful, not just doing it by accident. You have to know it's a vow you've taken, not care about it, have no conscience, and have no interest in fixing it. That was quite heavy. One wouldn't do that easily, I don't think. you break in a major way if you kill a human being. It means with intention. With intention, I will. Knowing you've got a vow, not caring, and have no interest in fixing it. And if you break it at the root, you take the vows again. You break it at the root if you break a major way. You break in a minor way, which means you can purify, and that's why it's so important. We're going to discuss this, to do the purification practice every day. Lama Zopa says we're insane not to do this type of practice where we purify our negative karma. You know, it's like a crucial practice. We're insane not to do it every day. Because the mind just naturally is creating karma every second. It's just natural. It's just what it does. And given that we're not high level bodhisattvas yet, we're going to be creating negative karma just naturally. It's not to be guilty about it. So like killing in a minor way, it would be killing anything that's not a human, like an ant, cockroaches, you know, the rats. And this is why for His Holiness the Dalai Lama in Dharamsala, he very rarely, when he gives this to big groups of people, he won't ever give it as, he'll only give it as not killing a human. Because he knows that most people, certainly Western people, it's too shocking to think you don't kill a cockroach, you know, it's just too hard to even consider. So he gives a vow as just merely not killing humans. But I can't do that. I have no right to change them. His Holiness can do that. I can't. So the way I'll be giving it will be as not killing anything. Now, the fact of the matter is, if we think about it, certainly using the Buddhist view, there's not an atom of space where you won't find living beings. Wherever, I mean, you know, if you take the Vajrayana model, which is very interesting, of the universe, the physical world is made of the 4 elements, and then there are all minds, trillions upon trillions upon trillions upon trillions of mind streams, consciousnesses. And all of us are conjoined with our own set of the 4 elements. So you could argue that wherever the 4 elements are is a conducive environment for sentient beings to live. So we know ourselves, our body is a walking zoo. Our mouth is is like repulsive. If you get microscopes in there and see all the creatures, you'd be so disgusted you couldn't believe it. Under your armpits like a zoo. Everywhere your body is a living organism. There's billions of creatures living in and on you. Everywhere you go, a plant, a tree, and this carpet, the dust mites in the air. There are billions of sentient beings everywhere. We're swallowing them, standing on them, eating them, squashing them every second. Not to mention the big ones like cockroaches, not to mention the elephants. So all the point is here is not, I will not kill anything. You will, but you have an intention. I do not want to kill anything. This is profound for the mind. This is the intention. Everything exists on the tip of the wish, as Lama Zopa says. So having the thought, I do not want to kill, is a tremendous, marvelous thought to have. And that guides you in that direction. It protects you. The intention, I will not kill. So when you take a vow not to kill, this is what Alex Berzin in his course notes, in the notes you've got, talks about this, and this is in the teachings. Every second you're keeping this vow. I mean, okay, Berzin says, it's in the teachings, that, you know, taking a vow is like a subtle physical form that is visible to clairvoyance. It's something really powerful. And as Lama Zopa says, once you've got a vow, 24 hours a day that you're keeping it, even without awareness, you're purifying your mind, you're programming your mind with that non-killing, and 24 hours a day, putting virtuous karmic seeds into your karmic seed bank vault. And just when you die, even alone, at the time of death, what we need most, and they go through this process in great detail, the way we die, what's crucial for us is to have bucket loads of delicious, strong, non-killing karmic seeds in our bank vault, because one of those is the cause of getting a human body. And at least, the very least, we need another human body so we can carry on our spiritual path, you know. So we need access to lots of non-killing karmic seeds. The main cause of getting a human body is non-killing. So if you've lived in vows of not killing all your life, then you've got billions of karmic seeds. Your mind is programmed with non-killing, which is a tremendously marvelous way of living an ethical life. And you are the beneficiary. And then this is the thing. So you can look at all the humans on this planet now. Billions of humans. Everyone got a human body because one of their non-killing karmic seeds was triggered at the time of their past death, not more than a few weeks before they found their way to their present mother's human fallopian tube. One of their non-killing karmic seeds would have been triggered. But now look at the difference. That's just one way that non-killing ripens, is as a human body. But look at the other 3 ways that killing or non-killing ripen. And you'll see that most humans, second way karma ripens is as a tendency. Most humans do not get born with a tendency to not kill. Most humans have the opposite. Most humans kill. Most religions say it's okay to kill. So it totally prevails. Look at it. The vast majority of humans have a tendency to kill. And then second, look at the consequences. The next kind of karma is called an experience similar to the cause. Look at the human beings who get killed or die young. That's the consequence of past killing. And then the third one is environmental karma. Look at the human beings who get sick. Look at human beings who are impacted by the negative physical environment. That's the fruit of killing as well. So if you look at the few humans who don't get sick, who don't get killed, who don't die young, you know, and then crucially, who don't have a tendency to kill, they are rare. And they're the ones who would have lived in the vows of not killing in the past. That's the Buddha's analysis. So to not kill is the most, if you're going to, I mean, one Lama said, if you want one piece of advice, don't kill. There's the heaviest consequences. At least don't kill. And my sense is if you feel you can't keep the vow to not kill, then you don't, you're not, maybe perhaps not ready to take refuge. Because one of the fundamental things that drives the Buddhist one is a strong aspiration, a strong wish to not harm. Killing in particular. And that doesn't mean you won't kill. You will all the time, but not intentionally. And this is the thing about karma. You're reprogramming your mind in a new direction. It's tremendous. You know, it's marvelous. It's so special. You should be so happy to even think that you want to live a life of not wanting to harm sentient beings. It's pretty rare on this planet. Unbelievable. It makes you so much more conscious. And if you do it in the context of vows, it's like infinitely more powerful. As Lama Zopa says, 24 hours a day that you're keeping these vows, you're ticking over virtuous karmic seeds, purifying your mind and programming your mind in virtue. Without vows, he says, you can't get ahead of the game. Just being good is not enough. And the crucial reason is this. I always quote this. In this room at this moment, we are probably not killing anything. But listen to this. We're not killing. But if there's no intention, I will not kill, then you are creating zero karma of not killing. And you need bucket loads of karmic seeds of conscious, intentional, or vow-driven not killing seeds in your mind. So the way to do that is to take vows. 24 hours a day, you're putting seeds in your mind, even without intention. But without vow, it's only when you meet the aunt or the ex-boyfriend and you say, I will not kill. Then you drop the karmic seed of not killing. So we can't get ahead of the game like that. So this is the power of vows. I have to think about it. This is psychological, not religion. You know yourself. I mean, vow means you made a strong decision, you know. We know when you make a strong decision, that's when you keep it. Just merely not doing something is sort of like passive. Proactively, consciously not doing something, that's different. And this is the thing about karma, the more we understand it, the Buddha's view. It's a way of programming your mind. Whatever's in your mind, you program your mind with that. So merely being a nice person and not killing, you know, you're being a nice person, but you're resting on your laurels. But having an intentional decision to not kill or living in vows of not killing, this is tremendously different. This is not meant to be religion. It's like psychology. Karma is just a way of Buddhists talking about how the mind works, you know. It's very powerful. I mean, we should be sad not to live in vows. They protect us, you know. They protect us. The things aren't set in stone. Hugely protect us every second. And it makes you more conscious. Like, you know very well yourself, if you're driving the car, you've never heard of the rule not to go over 70 kilometers an hour, then you don't know you've broken the vow. But if you know there's a rule, you're always conscious and it'll protect you. It's logical. It becomes in the front of your mind. Vows protect you. And you are the beneficiary. Then others are the beneficiary as well. But this is the emphasis on these vows that you're the beneficiary. When you get to the next level, which we'll get to in a minute, they're the bodhisattva vows. Still also to protect your body and speech from harming others, but it's more now to help others, more powerful, more expansive. We'll go into those later. Then you have no stealing, which is taking the ungiven, the Tibetans put it. So you break in a major way if you take what is of value to somebody. And in a minor way, if you take anything that hasn't been given. It's a very good practice, you know. Maybe you don't take things, but we're sort of greedy and like getting things for free. Press a button, you get a free movie. So easy. It wasn't given to you. Very good practice. Stealing, lying, saying words that aren't true. You break in a major way if you lie about your spiritual attainments. You break in a minor way if you say anything, that you say anything that is not true, that misleads somebody. These are really marvelous kind of protections for oneself, that you can see that they are. And the fourth one is no jumping on the wrong partner. That's often given in a much stricter way, but the way I give it here, which is the way Lama Zopa teaches it, is that at least you don't cheat on a partner. Don't take someone else's partner, you don't cheat on yours. And the fifth is no intoxicants. One doesn't have to take all these vows. So if you want your heroin shot every day, don't take the last one. Okay? So, but not to be afraid of them. See them as protection, not as something to squash you. That's important. So any questions about the vows?
There's one question from online.
Yes.
It's from Beth, and she says, is there a chance, can you break the Pranamokshya vows in our dreams? If the intention is present, we're aware we're committing the action and don't care.
There's no object though. You've got to have, the first one has to be an object that you do it to. You can't kill it. There's no person in your dream. You can't lie. There's no person to be lied to. Stealing, there's no person to lie from, to steal from. And you can't take alcohol in your dreams, and you can't jump on the wrong partner. There's no partner. So it's not a broken vow.
So Beth was, she said she intentionally killed someone in a dream. She's concerned about it, purified it upon waking, and is worried that she broke the vow.
No, because there's no person to kill. So you don't want to keep having that thought. Don't get nervous. So just keep purifying. And anyway, dreams can be very tricky. I mean, that can be a good sign, darling. You may be killing your ego. Don't worry about it. It's okay. You can interpret dreams in different ways. It's okay. What else, people? Come on, talk to me. Anybody? I have a feeling we've got an awful lot on our agenda, so I'm kind of anxious about the time, and I shouldn't be. It's okay. So what time is it? What's the time in the Europeans? Let me look at your time zone. Have a look.
Sally has a question.
Okay, hang on. So let's see the time zones. Moscow, 10 at night. It's nighttime. No, it's daytime. How do you know? It can't be. We're ahead of everybody. So it's early morning in Paris. Oh, I see. It's 10 o'clock in the morning in Delhi. London, you're at 5 o'clock. Europeans are up early. Australians are okay. And then what about Americans? You're nighttime. You're yesterday. Okay, fine. Go on then. What's the question?
Sally.
Yeah. Go, Sally.
Hi, Venerable Robina. We had 3 chooks in our backyard.
Americans, a chook is a chicken. It's Australian for chicken. Go on.
Anyway, last night we've been getting a bit lazy with the locking them in. And I'm just probably asking a question about intention with the will not to kill.
What happened?
A fox got 3 of them. Got them all.
Oh no! You poor
Mm.
they must have died awfully eaten alive. So, honey child, you knew the danger. So you knew the danger, but you didn't intend to have them killed, did you? That's a big lesson to wake up call. But you sort of know there was a danger of the foxes. Did you know that?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, and that's where I wonder. I'm feeling guilty. That we.
I understand. Feel guilty, but don't feel guilty. Learn from it. That's the big learning. Guilt is just beat yourself up, but learn from it. That means, oh my God, I did do that. I didn't intend to kill them. It was not your, that's very clear. You did not intend to kill, but you're lazy and you just can't be bothered or whatever reason it was. And now you learn and you think, what can I do to fix it for the future? Don't go on about it. That's just guilt. That's hopeless. That's miserable.
Well, I guess we're restructuring our backyard, and we'd been thinking, oh well, eventually, the chooks will die and we'll have more space. So I guess I'm feeling like, did we intentionally leave those?
Darling, I think don't get too drama queen about it, please. You're sort of hoping they'll go away, but then learn from it. Learn about your mind. Don't exaggerate. Take responsibility. Know the chickens died. Be sorry for the fox, because the poor fox created the negative karma of eating the chickens.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
And recognize that our actions do impact upon others. Be responsible. Regret it sincerely, and vow not to do it again. And be more cautious. Don't wallow in it. That's not helpful. And don't make up extra reasons that aren't there to flagellate yourself with.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Robina. Thank you.
Learn from it. That's the main one. What can I do to make it better next time? That's the real point. Learn from our mistakes. That's the real point. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Good.
And Sonia has a question.
Yes, Sonia, go.
Hi, good morning, Venerable Robina. Thank you for your time today. It was just a quick question about living in vows.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for maybe about a couple of months now, and I've noticed a real shift in my mindset. And what I tend to do is I tend to sort of, live in vows. For example, like I would say, I would first sort of watch what my tendencies are. For example, aversion or attachment, or it could be something that I know that I have like a strong tendency towards. So the first thing in the morning when I do sort of my altar and stuff, I sort of live in vows by saying, okay, for the next 24 hours, I would not have aversion or sort of frustration or anger. But then when I'm placed in a situation where, I'm towards someone that sort of shouting at me or, having, I'm trying my best to hold in that anger.
Yes.
And I try and remind myself of the vow I've taken that morning.
Yes,
And if I do break that, I try and, of course, do the purification at night. My question to you is that once that's broken, isn't that like almost like you've just gone back on your word, like you've not really.
So first of all, the vows we're talking about here are very specific vows within the Buddhist tradition that come from the previous teacher. I got them from my teacher, they got from theirs, and they stem from the Buddha. These are very specific set of vows. You can have your own personal vows, like you're saying, but sure. So you have to learn about yourself from this. You learn about yourself. So maybe then you have to learn what your capability is. As Lama says, you don't lie to yourself. So maybe you've got to start to make a vow to not do it for 5 minutes. Then you keep it and you get stronger. The next minute will be 10 minutes and you grow. You've got to know your mind well. You'll be very conscious. So learn about your mind from this. Learn about yourself.
Sure. Thank you.
Understand, darling? Yes, I'm sure you do. Okay. So this also brings me. When we say we'd have our break? Gosh. What time are we finishing today?
5:30.
Oh gosh. Let me just keep checking. I mean, what can we do? So hang on a minute. Europe is they're just getting up. They're fine. Europeans are good. Americans are at night. Are there many Americans there? There are, aren't there? Lou's there. A few Americans. You getting tired yet? You're okay? You're managing?
Thumbs up.
Okay. I've got to do. What can I do? What can I do? My best. But I don't want. Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. So so I think we have a quick break now. A little break. There's only one toilet, so I have to line up with pee behind a bush. Got some pee bushes. I'm joking. I'll have a little break, have a cup of tea or something. Yeah, relax. We just have to relax. It's okay. I'm feeling anxious. I don't need to. It's okay. So then I think what we will do for those who would like to take refuge for all and renew, we'll do the refuge and the lay vows. So we'll do that first. Okay. Then we can take the Bodhisattva vows, which needs more preparation and more teachings and more understanding things. And then we've got the it's Holiness, 90 minutes. Well, we're just going to have to see what happens. So have a break.
How long?
Have a little break.
How long for?
Just
15 minutes.
be natural. Okay, I'll see you whatever the time is. We'll be right. So we're going to be struggling to fit everything in, but we'll see how we go. Okay, we'll see how we go. We'll be fine. We'll see how we go. You see, maybe what we can do. I was thinking out that His Holiness is it. Okay, never mind. You don't need to know that. I'll work it out.